Welcome or welcome back to my Leah's Cup of Books. I'm Leah, and today's episode is all about how I try reading Francine Rivers' book, Redeeming Love, and I am stopping. I haven't finished the book yet. I'm pausing to give you sort of before I finish the book, my thoughts on it. Think of this as a bookish chat. It's not a full book review, but if you are somebody that's interested in trying this author out, this is my first time trying out this very popular Christian author, then this can be maybe a little bit of encouragement, maybe give you a little bit more insight into what is she writing about, especially in her most popular book, Redeeming Love. Then this is the place. I'm gonna give you some of my initial thoughts so far, and honestly probably some trigger warnings so that you know sort of what to expect going into the book, and really just share some of what I'm thinking so far as I'm getting into the book for the first time. Let's get right into it. First of all, is it boring or not? I think that is a question that a lot of people think about when it comes to Christian fiction in general, especially Christian romance fiction. Like, is it going to be enough of the romance that feels like you don't want to put it down? Is it going to feel like, oh my goodness, like I need to figure out what happens to this couple. I need to figure out, like, are they end goals? Like, is it a slow burn? Like, what's going on in this story? Honestly, I will say my initial thoughts based on reading the book so far. I'm only on part 1. I don't remember what chapter I'm on just because I'm listening to the audiobook, and I just started it I think a couple of days ago, and I'm trying to sort of like keep up and catch up so that I can finish reading the book sooner rather than later. But I will say that it is more of a slow burn kind of book. It is not something that moves super fast. We start off with the backstory of the main character, whose original name is Sarah, and then her name changes to a few different things. I think it's Angel and then Mara, but I'm not far enough into the story to know if Mara is going to stick or not. But that's where I am. We go through her whole life story. So if you're looking for a romance that is going to be like right into the romance part of it and right into like how they meet and how the protagonists fall for each other, then this is not the book for you. It's going to, again, take its time introducing the character, and you kind of feel bad for her. Honestly, I've been feeling so bad for this girl, and it just seems like nobody really loves her as much as they should. Nobody's really treating this girl right because she's a kid. She's actually a kid, and the stuff that's happening to her is pretty sad. I also want to point out trigger warnings. So this book, I'm just trying to think of how to say it. So obviously it's a Christian book, and it's a historical fiction Christian romance book. It's a lot of words, right? But it's one of those books, so you're going to have some things going on in it, obviously. Some things that I will say with this particular story, I don't know much about it because I sort of picked it up based on it being highly recommended just in the bookish community as a Christian romance by a popular author in that field or in that, in that genre. And I think I know where this is going because I've gotten to the part where the love interest has been introduced, and he says that his name is Michael Hosea. And if you know the Bible and you know that there's a book called Hosea, and there was a whole story in there about which it's a very interesting story. If you haven't read it before, I encourage you to read it. And I'm excited too because I'm going through the Bible sort of like book by book, starting from the beginning. I haven't gotten to Hosea yet, but I've read it before. I'm excited to read it again. All that to say, it is a story basically about a man who is basically told by God wants him to marry a prostitute. So I don't know if you can say those words here on YouTube and Spotify, but I'm just saying it because it's in the book. So don't be mad at me, platforms. Love you guys and everybody who's watching and listening. But it's not, so all that to say, it's not like they met at a restaurant and fell in love. You know what I mean? It's not one of those love stories where it's all cutesy. She's literally in her profession, and he sees her and is like, I want her. And the way that he does it, though, is very sweet. I will say, I'm going to try to put like a screenshot at some points on the screen if I haven't already, to show where I left off so you can see where I am in the audiobook. But I'm at the point where there was a scene that I just finished up before I started recording actually today, and Michael Hosea was asking the girl whose name was Sarah, but now she's a woman. I think she's a little older. I don't know how old she is here. That's one thing I was trying to keep up with because she was sort of thrown into this world, her profession, a bit young, sadly, after some trigger warnings. So there is death in her life. There's loss. She is a child of, so I guess you can say spoilers on this part. I'm going to try not to give too many spoilers, but she is a child of just like I'll just say like a very problematic situation. And she was raised by a single mom. And so she has a lot going on, and she ends up sort of thrown away into this life, in this profession that she does not want to be in. And they change her name to Angel, and she becomes like the best girl in the business. Take that as you will. And honestly, she is just not feeling it. Like, she's sort of not feeling this life. I think she kind of walks around being like, I'm going to do it just because I have to. So trigger warnings of just the type of profession that she's in. It's not very vulgar, but there are some things that happen or that are hinted at in the book that I will say just be aware if that's something that you don't want to read. Just know that there are going to be certain things happening or hinted at on the page. But I think because it's a cleaner read, it's not going to be as explicit. So just keep that in mind. But moving on to how Michael Hosea comes into the picture. He visits her. Well, he sees her first, I think on the street, and then he visits her, but not in the way that you think, right? So I will just say that I'm trying to give you like the good stuff, the good details without spoiling too much, but just know that the way that he comes to her is just very not what you would expect. And I remember thinking like, okay, I think I like where this is going. I do know the story of Hosea though, so I'm like, wait a minute, I don't know how close to the material that it's going to be to the original material. I don't know. I think that this is a Hosea retelling or inspired by Hosea story, but I'm also not completely sure. I don't know how deep it's going to go. All I know is Michael Hosea, the way that he is pursuing our main character, Angel, aka Sarah, aka the new name that he wants to give her, Mara, is very much like he's following God's lead. And he's just like, he knows that he feels like and knows that God is saying, hey, I want you to marry this girl. And so we're sort of going through this with him, like, he's like, wait, are you sure? And so he pursues, and she's just like, no, like, what are you doing? Like, I have a job, I have a life. Not that she's happy with it, but I think she's just been hardened a little bit just by other things she's been through. You know, I think she's just been through a lot of stuff in her life. And with some of the trigger warnings I sort of warned you about, you can just see like, yeah, she's had a hard life. So she's looking at this man like, I don't know what you want, leave me alone. And he's like, no, but let me tell you the part that I just ended on before I started recording today. So tell me why Michael Hosea was like to our girl Angel, who he keeps calling Mara. And she's like, stop calling me that. Like, that's not my name. And he's like, tell me my name. Because I think he's at this point where he keeps coming back and it's like, I want you to marry me and I want to save you from this life. And she's like, no, over and over and over again. But when I tell you, it's moments like that where I was like, oh, like this whole story, we were like listening to her life story so far. And then we feel for her. So when this man is pursuing her like this and he's not inappropriate, he's not doing what the other men are doing, nothing like that. It's just, it's very different. It's like, okay, wait a minute. His approach is different. Even she notices he's different. And he never like touches her or anything like that until like this moment where I think he may have like touched her face at some point, but it was like or her shoulder, like it's very innocent. Like he's not doing anything inappropriate. And so when we get this moment of like, I think he tells her, say my name. I think that's, yes. I'm pretty sure he was like, say my name. And then listen, okay, I got chills. It was very like, wait a minute, like, okay, the romance is romancing. We're finally getting here. And I feel like it took a long time to get here. So I would say slow burn for sure. If you like slow burn romances, this is a slow burn romance. This is obviously a clean romance as well. So no spice, obviously though, which I think I'm using the word obviously a lot, but just keep in mind that in this book, you're going to have things hinted at just because it's her profession. Like they hint at her saying vulgar things sometimes, but she doesn't like actually say them from what I've read so far. And so just keep those things in mind. So if you're looking for a slow burn romance that has no spice, that's clean and not boring and inspired by a biblical story, and you have also that historical element to it, it's that historical romance. Some things that happen are very romantic in a way that just feels like old-timey and cozy. And so like the way that he pursues her and wants to marry her, I feel like that's something you don't see that often in a lot of modern stories unless they're specifically Christian, clean, especially Christian, you know what I mean? And so if you're looking for all of those kinds of tropes or feelings or vibes, then I think you will like this book. I'm liking it so far. I don't think it's boring. I do think, again, slow start, so be patient because there's going to be a lot of backstory, but at least it felt like it. But I think it's worth it because you really feel bad for this character and you want to see how it ends. And I plan on finishing this book. I want to see how it ends for our girl Sarah, aka Angel, aka Mara, and I want to see how the love story ends up because right now things are starting to heat up between them. So I am definitely going to stick around. I want to pause and add a little context to this episode. When I originally recorded my first thoughts on Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers, I hadn't finished the book yet. Those reactions are still valid, and I stand by them. But now that I've completed the story, I felt that it was important to add a few more reflections because this story and this book really turned out to be much heavier than I expected. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I will say that going in, I assumed that this book would be a historical romance with Christian themes and loose parallels to the biblical story of Hosea and Gomer. But what I didn't realize was how emotionally intense and messy that this story would be. And again, it doesn't mean that it was a bad story, but I do want to clearly state some content and trigger warnings for you. Because this book includes prostitution, abuse in multiple forms, including references to abuse involving children, deeply complicated relationships as well, and moments of trauma. While this book is often labeled a Christian or clean read, that doesn't mean that it's lighthearted or easy. There are also some implied and closed-door intimacy scenes. There are also some scenes that may be considered fade to black. There are some historical context that includes comments about race or slavery that may feel insensitive to modern readers, and these reflect the setting in the era and not usually the values of the main characters. But keep in mind that this is a mature story. I wouldn't recommend it for younger readers or older teens, but I would say that if older teens want to read it, that they should read it with some guidance and some context, maybe with a trusted adult as that guidance and maybe a Bible study of the book of Hosea. But with all of that said, I can still recommend this book to you. This is an incredibly powerful book, and at its core, I think Redeeming Love isn't just a romance, but it's a story about relentless love. Michael cannot save Sarah, only God can, and I think that truth remained reframed, the entire book for me. And this is exactly why I want to have more honest conversations about clean and Christian books, because not all of them are the same. So if you want more thoughtful book recommendations with clear context and more book reviews and discussions and clean and Christian reading resources, then I'd love for you to join my free email list and blog on Substack, which is linked below. Let me know down below in the comments if you have read Redeeming Love. What are your thoughts on it? Have you read the book? Are you planning to read the book? Have you ever watched the movie adaptation? I think there's just one. But yeah, let me know. Should I finish it? I want to hear all your thoughts down below in the comments. But while you're at it, make sure that you leave this emoji, because if you made it this far, then I want to be able to see the crew, the end of video crew. So leave this emoji down below with your thoughts on the book as well. And that's all I have for this video. So thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, bye.